when there are people that are credentialed to actually teach this in age appropriate ways and age developmentally appropriate ways, it's a huge stretch. They themselves did not get sex education. There are just so few parents that have gotten it in the ways that I'm teaching it and the ways that public health research has improved curricula to actually be.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, of course, here with you every week. And I want to get right into it with our guest today. I'm honored for you to meet her and to highlight her work. She's a proud Filipina consultant and speaker on intersectional health topics such as pornography literacy, consent, gender, and beauty standards. She received her master's in education and teaching from the University of Hawaii and her master's in public health and sexuality from Columbia University. After experiencing a public smear campaign, she was able to share her own words and perspectives in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Business Insider, and many other publications. On Instagram, you may know her as your friendly ghostwriter, composing those texts that you often avoid sending that are about setting boundaries. So we're both big fans of Esther Perel and we're foodies, so I know you're going to love her too. She's truly a powerhouse and I'm thrilled to have her. So please help me welcome Justine Ang Fonte.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Yeah. So welcome. It's official again. You guys, we have tried this so many times. I don't know what is happening. So we are crossing our fingers that everything is good. We were actually introduced by Jay Schiffman, another podcaster. So shout out to Jay.
Hey, Jay.
And since the last time we spoke, you've been in Hawaii. Tell us about it.
I decided to take a solo healing retreat to Hawaii where I used to actually live. And so it was really nice to connect with a couple friends, but more so with the food and the beaches that I miss, especially during New York City winter. Now I'm back to the grind.
Yeah, well, New York City winter is for sure. Although right now it's beautiful outside. So
it's pretty good. It's a whopping 53 degrees.
I know. And the sun is out. It's amazing. So I want to get into your story, but to minimize interruptions or disruptions in your story, let's start by telling our members what they're getting this week. So members, your recipe is for apple pie energy bites. They are absolutely delicious. In 10 minutes, you have an awesome snack or even a little dessert. So they're made with apples, walnuts, whole oats, some nut butter, dried cranberries if you want. Maybe go crazy and get a little chocolate chip in there. They're so good. So then we are also sending you a copy of the article Justine wrote for Parents Magazine called How Sex Education Keeps Kids Safe. So Justine, tell us a little bit about what can, whet our appetite for this article.
Yeah, well, a lot of parents are concerned that sex ed is not something that's appropriate for their child at the age that they're at. And this article that I wrote with Dr. Hina Talib, I think really destigmatizes a lot of those ideas, but also gives them a really easy way to understand how simple it can be to talk about these things with your child and how there are ways to do it in age-appropriate ways.
Awesome. So you guys, you definitely want this. It's not too late. Just make sure you're a member. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. So it's a total deal. When you take advantage of the full offering, you're saving far more than that $10 monthly cost. So seriously, a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, your membership supports this podcast and this community so we can continue bringing you new episodes and experts every single week. So remember, all you have to do, head over to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or forget remembering the URL, click the link in the show notes, even easier. Once you're there, it's a couple clicks, a little typing to give us your email and your payment method, and that's it. You'll hit support now. You'll be ready to go. You'll get this week's recipe for the apple pie energy bites and Justine's article for Parents Magazine. So, all right, Justine. So, you say you were a victim of 2021, right? And there was certainly some controversy, but tell us your story, like how you went from growing up in Houston to teaching middle school in New York City at these private schools, and then, of course, the drama.
Yeah, I'd like to say I was a survivor of
Yeah,
2021.
there we
I
go.
feel very different, and I think I'm in that place of saying it because of having a healing retreat now.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot better. But I got into this work because my first year of teaching, my first month of teaching, was as an eighth grade math teacher in Houston, Texas, which for many people, they know it is an abstinence only state. I had pregnant students who were in eighth grade and students who were already parents and students that didn't know that being on their period was something that was healthy and expected and normal, but instead would skip school on the days that they would have periods. They're in missing school for half the year almost, not knowing what was going on with their body. So to me, it was really the seed that was planted about how there is a direct connection to health education, and how they actually live in a healthy or unhealthy life. But when there isn't any health education, it's clear that it impacts their academic, goals. And so I was really put into this experience early in my teaching career, which really dictated where I would go. And that is why now I'm doing work in both public health and in education.
Yeah. And so tell us the story of, what ended up happening. Were you full time at these schools, or you were brought in, right? If I remember correctly, you were brought in to teach this curriculum, and then parents sort of had some uproar.
There were four different articles written by the New York Post in the month of end of May and in June. And in each of those four articles that happened each of those weekends, they were depicting various aspects of my career. The very first article about a school I was a guest speaker at, where I was invited to speak to the junior class, 11th graders, 17-year-olds, about pornography literacy. And then the second article was about a first grade class that I taught at a school where I was full time teaching at and had been there as the director of health and wellness for 9 years. That class in the first grade was all about private parts being private. Both of those articles were slandered by several global media groups and news organizations leaning far right who were displeased and uncomfortable with the fact that young people were getting sex ed. And it was really stemming from a couple of parents in each of these schools, both the one I worked in and the one that I was a guest in, who felt that same way. But instead of reporting their dislike of it to the counselors that hired me or to an administrator, they went right to the New York Post to have it published, which was then interpreted in many different iterations from other conservative news groups, and really put me in a position where I feared for my physical safety. My emotional safety was completely rocked due to the amount of death threats, hate mail, hate voicemails, and street harassment that I actually received walking the streets of New York City and people recognizing my face from the amount of vitriol that was out there about my work.
Yeah. And I think, that kind of a response, eh, whatever it is, right? And we don't really want to focus on that, but I think we do want to focus on like people, this kind of thing can make people really uncomfortable. And I think the whole thing is that the work you do helps people be comfortable with those conversations and to actually have these conversations. But I'm curious, like, from your perspective, why are people so uncomfortable with it? Like, how did we get to the point where this is so taboo?
I mean, there's a lot of big answers to that: white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, colonization. But it's not that episode today. So, what I will say is, as a result of those oppressions, we are still dealing with its ramifications to the point where even parents today have not still gotten comprehensive sex education to be able to understand its importance and parent around it in their own homes. So they saw these topics coming into their kids' classrooms and feeling that it was a threat to their ability to parent well around those topics because nobody ever taught them it. So there was a
Right.
lot of forgiveness and grace that I was giving to parents who were feeling that discomfort. But I do think it was highly inappropriate and immature for them to report their dislike in the way that they did.
Totally. Totally. And so we want to reframe these conversations and really help people understand that it's not about their their conversations as a parent, but really making sure that it's actually life-saving information for kids to have and at all ages. And I think the difference between knowing something and doing something about it is really understanding why. So I guess that's my question to you is like, from your perspective, why is this life-saving information for them, for the kids?
Because comprehensive sex education is covering topics around conflict resolution. It's covering topics around how to understand their body better, how it functions, and how to take care of it, how to protect it from people that aren't going to respect their body. How do they protect it from people they thought were going to respect their body and then don't? This is why it's life saving. We know that teaching young children about the actual terms for their anatomy actually makes them less vulnerable to child sexual predators. And there are studies on child predators and what they look for in their prey. And it is specifically, I look for children that don't know anything about their body, don't have the language, and don't have the assertion skills to exercise their boundaries because they're easy targets. So it was really interesting that I was being called a pedophile and a sexual predator for teaching young children how to protect themselves from actual child sexual
Right.
predators.
Right. So, and one of the other things, and we'll dig into some of this deeper, but one of the other things you talk about is that the health gap impacts the achievement gap. And so explain this to us, right? Like, what is that connection? And I think, again, this sort of reinforces why we need to be having these conversations.
Schools focus so much on quantitative data to prove that they are teaching and doing the right things. How much have they learned over the course of a semester or a term that will allow them to matriculate to the next grade and hopefully matriculate into college and do well on an SAT score? So when we focus on just that, we aren't looking at their ability to be present, to retain information, and their willingness to even being a strong student. Every student comes into a school day and a school classroom with baggage based on what their home life looks like, what their environment that they're raised in looks like, and what the circumstances are around all of those things. So if they're a child that is chronically dealing with poverty, with classism, with racism, with sexism, with transphobia, with homophobia, with abuse, with an unhealthy relationship, how are you expecting them to actually pay attention in class and learn the content that's being taught to them? They're not making that connection when they need to start making that connection. Oftentimes the ism or the threat is in the very own school environment. If they're coming to school knowing that that's where their bully also is, or this is the same school that isn't addressing fat phobia, and they're a fat child, they're not going to feel comfortable learning. They're going to feel more concerned about how they're being perceived by their peers than the content that's up on the board. So we need to start bringing in topics around social emotional learning that includes comprehensive health education, understanding mental health, understanding substance misuse, understanding what nutrition really means and how to really understand your relationship with food, and also understanding what sexuality is, identities and behaviors, so that when these things start to occur and become really relevant in their life, or as they're already becoming relevant in their life, they know how to actually take care of their body.
Well, and I think the other side of that is they're going to, if somebody's looking for this information, they're going to go find it somewhere. And I think it could be the assumption of parents or people that they want to have that conversation, but are they? Right. And then to your point, they come to school and they're trying to wrap their head around all these things on top of what's being presented to them in the actual curriculum. And I think the reality is not talking about it doesn't mean they're not getting the information. Instead, they're getting it from Google and YouTube or porn or whatever it is. That in fact, teaching what you teach is just making sure that they're getting quality information, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, if a parent is a physician, it doesn't mean that they're opting their kid out of science classes because they could teach it instead, because they're a scientist having gone to medical school. No, they still allow their child to attend science class. If their parent, is an accountant, it doesn't mean they opt them out of math class. But this assumption that they can all of a sudden be a sex educator when there are people that are credentialed to actually teach this in age appropriate ways and age developmentally appropriate ways it's a huge stretch. They themselves did not get sex education. There are just so few parents that have gotten it in the ways that I'm teaching it and the ways that public health research has improved curricula to actually be. Do I think parents are or should be a part of that conversation? Absolutely. But they shouldn't be the only place that they're getting this. Also, it might not be in the home front that their child even feels safe to talk about this. If they know their parent is not going to be comfortable if their child is gay, how is this gay child going to get any information about sexuality in a way that feels safe to them? It might be school. It might be coming from their health teacher. It might be coming from someone else in the school, but not from the home front. So having these topics come in to our children's lives in a variety of different angles is really needed, not just from the home front, not only from the school front, but as a partnership. And so I'm always connecting with parent groups to make sure they have content to be able to do this in sex positive ways and to do it in ways that are comfortable for them and meet where they're at in their own understanding of sexuality topics.
Excellent. So I want to dig in a little bit to like how do we have these conversations about sexuality and body image and all these things at, sort of different ages. Really quick, a message from our partner for this episode. Oh, our newest partner at that, Layered Jewelry. So the modern woman is multifaceted, taking on important roles in the various aspects of her life. Inspired by her own multi-layered life as a busy mom, trendsetter, entrepreneur, and influencer, Amber Reidinger McLaughlin set out to create a line of jewelry that lets women create their unique style and celebrate their own beautiful layers. Layered is luxurious and affordable, the perfect combination of the modern woman. Layers allows you to mix and match, stack, and layer pieces that make you feel empowered and beautiful. Each piece is handcrafted to be unique and exquisite just for you. So you may have seen on my Instagram stories from the holidays, like some gift ideas. Layered pieces were all over that. So they look so much more expensive than they are. I personally mix them with some of my good jewelry and I get compliments on them all the time. And I'm also big on stacking, so I tend to wear a couple necklaces at a time. They're amazing for this. So the first layered piece that I bought, and probably the one that I wear the most, is the Katie textured solitaire necklace. It comes in sterling silver or 14 karat plated sterling silver. So no green skin, right? And catch this, you guys. It is a whopping $49.95 before your 10% off and free shipping for being a Salad with a Side of Fries listener. So simply text the word layered, LAYERED, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word layered to 844-947-4846 to get this handcrafted, luxurious yet affordable jewelry at 10% off plus free shipping. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. All right. So, Justine, body image, right? And it's so intimately connected to lifestyle and the influences around us. And with the work that I do in nutrition and weight loss and wellness, body image is so intertwined here. But I'd love to hear from your perspective and from your experience, like the body image and sexuality and even like sexualization, like what are the topics that we need to talk about around this, and how do we talk about it?
All of those: body
Right.
image, sexualization, and how all of that sex with a young person's ideas. I mean, I think part of how we talk about this is by making sure that we're modeling language in our own homes that says to our child that I accept you and I affirm you and who you are. And so that is not always the privilege that, especially kids of color get to experience because of how media represents them, and how beauty standards don't favor them. So when I talk about body image as a sex educator, it really is through a sexuality lens, because body image is linked to attractiveness, and attractiveness is linked to how people could fall in love or be attracted to another person based on what they look like. And this can form a relationship, it can form a sexual behavior with the other person, and it can certainly add or compromise your sense of belonging. And so when we talk about this with young children, pre-K to third grade, it's all about affirming their bodies, really, understanding that their body is coming from their ancestors, and that's a gift to really embrace. And how we embrace different types of bodies is really a reflection on the diversity that this world is. And our bodies are coming from a genetic body blueprint that's been determined by our genetics based on where our ancestors have come from. That should be a beautiful thing, but we have these writers of what beauty is, these definers of what beauty is, that is telling us it looks a certain way, it's a certain shape, and it's a certain color. So anything that is not that is deemed not attractive. And then people will start to be conditioned into believing that that is true. And then you have people that are left out, who are unloved, who don't feel loved because they're not a part of this attractive, world. And we can feel that when you're only in first grade, in just what kids want to play with you. So that's what it sounds like in, an elementary setting. In the middle school, we have to start taking into account that because puberty is starting, their bodies are physically making changes. For almost every middle schooler I have met, these changes are horrifying because they've never had these changes happen before. And it seems to be happening so quickly, but it doesn't seem to be as fast as the more advanced kid. And therefore, you feel like you're left behind, or you're the kid who's the advanced kid, and then everyone thinks you're a weirdo. Whether that be hair growing in places you didn't have before, or body parts being larger than they ever were before, or weight gain that you're now attaching to you not making good food choices, when in fact it's your body becoming a reproductive adult. And then you have students who are exploring their sexuality, or already know that they are trans or they are queer, and now they are coming into a body that doesn't align with the one that they actually want or feel affirmed by. And that is a terrifying reality. So we want to talk about how bodies are intended to change. And when we affirm you as, our child, as our student, we want you to feel comfortable enough to talk about what's happening so that we can help you to take care of your body in a way that aligns with what is true to you and your authentic self. When we talk to high school students about body image, a lot of it has to do with attractiveness that is tied to social capital. So when we're looking at, being media literate, we have to include things like being porn literate, because really the main common times that we see naked bodies that aren't in a textbook are coming from mainstream porn. So they're getting these ideas that they need to be hairless everywhere, below their neck, that they need to have body parts that are of a certain size, and they have to have certain curvatures and tone and skin colors in order to be deemed beautiful and valuable. And so these are conversations that have nothing to do with intercourse, but everything to do with identity and sexuality. That's sex ed. So we can use a commercial that we're watching with our child, an advertisement on a billboard. We can talk about something they've seen in current events. That's your sex ed curriculum at home. But parents are thinking right away a sex talk is intercourse talk, or not getting pregnant talk, when there is so much that surrounds sexuality that is impacting our young people from pre-K through 12th grade.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because, first of all, what I appreciate about what you're sharing is that what I'm hearing is we need to start young, and we also need to continue to reinforce and expand the conversation as we get older, or, as these kids grow up. And it also seems like, to some degree, like staying a little bit ahead of what they're likely to experience or what they're likely to hear from their friends or things like that, so that the first person they're hearing things from is not necessarily somebody that they don't feel comfortable asking questions, or who doesn't necessarily have the answers to their questions.
Right.
So how do you, and I try to stay away from, politics and, the fray, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question. Like, how do you have a conversation, especially in high school, about bodily autonomy, given sort of the public context and the Supreme Court and abortion? Like, how do you have this conversation?
I think with a high schooler that you're talking to about bodily autonomy, it's giving them some of the history as to where this is coming from. And just because there are legislators that are turning this to action, it doesn't mean that they are medically accurate, have lived experiences, or know what the hell they're doing. I mean, we know so many politicians that are exactly that, a politician. They're not an educator, they're not a scientist, or they're not a person who's ever experienced having their bodily autonomy be challenged. And so having those conversations beyond what the actual mandate is or the ban is, one really talks about the humanness behind all of this and the weaknesses and our faults. And we're also letting them know that they are surrounded by an adult that actually does care and wants them to exercise their bodily autonomy and will work to make that a reality for them, whether it is, in a state that they live in or not, because health is a human right, and that is a national, beyond a national, but a global understanding. So we aren't fully, at a stage where there are bans on every single aspect. It's in certain communities and regions, which is already as very terrifying. But I think giving them the holistic picture as to who these adults are, and just because they're an adult, it doesn't mean that they actually have the knowledge to deliver health that is a human right.
I'm like, mic drop. Like, let's just take a moment. Thank you. Yes. And I think it's also, for a lot of people, like, that can be an uncomfortable conversation. So I appreciate you giving us the language for that and the context for that. So I have to ask also, and this probably, certainly applies more to the high school student, but you mentioned it and I mentioned it before, but porn literacy. So to help people understand, right? Because we did say that a lot of what you teach in sex ed is not about intercourse. And I think the idea that makes people sort of uncomfortable is like, what does that even mean? Right? When you say porn literacy, I think it's actually not what people think. So, what is it and why is it so important?
Porn literacy is the understanding that pornography is not education, it's entertainment. I think if we were to ask somebody what's media literacy, they would be able to say, well, when I watch a commercial, I know that these are actors and these are performers, and this is a curated, set, staged, and is sending a message that does not necessarily imply what should be implemented in the real world. Put that word media in a different box and replace it with porn, it's the same exact thing. What you're watching is performed by actors who have been curated based on what they look like and directed to do certain things with their body for an entertainment industry. But because we don't live in a world that normalizes talking about sex, where can people find that easily to, quote, learn from, is from mainstream porn, which shows a lot of sex, which shows a lot of naked bodies and what bodies can look like. And without any pairing of the education aspect that this is not education or an instruction manual. Remember, this is a performance with people who have a glam squad, who have access or resources to look a certain way, or who have changed their body to look a certain way, and who have been directed and paid to do certain things with their body and somebody else's body.
So having that conversation, right? Like, you know, also we want that as part of a bigger conversation around intercourse education, right? Or intercourse uh, literacy, if you will, to use your words. So, like, how do we have these conversations that are, and I know I feel like this is sort of a buzzword, but like sex positive, but also protective. It sort of feels like two sides of a coin, but they don't have to be, right? So, how can we help parents and empower parents to have these conversations because their school may not be doing the sex ed like we're talking about it too?
Right. I think that porn can be good if sex ed is good. And we live in a country where sex ed is bad. So mainstream porn is also bad for our young people. That is not something that I say lightly, because I am never promoting censoring porn and stopping porn. It's about being a literate consumer and being a conscious consumer, and being an ethical consumer. It's going beyond like, what are we just seeing at face value and then, making any judgments on it. It's about seeing like, in what ways is porn something that serves our safety, our affirmation, and our joy, and in what ways does it not model for us safety, affirmation, and joy. And because sex ed is bad, porn tends to be the default, and therefore children are learning not how to use a condom, because you rarely see one being used. They're not learning how to have a conversation around birth control options or aftercare. They're not learning about how one particular race can actually be uplifted because they're seeing them be dehumanized and objectified. And then they're learning that pleasure is easily obtained if you have a vulva, because it seems that they are coming and orgasming all the time, multiple times. And that's not a reality for actual real people. So it's not serving our safety, fulfillment, our affirmation, and our joy. And yet it's becoming the instruction manual as to how to do intercourse. But it's teaching us so many other things beyond that, because of the fact that we're not talking about it in classroom spaces or at dinners or in, car rides with our kids.
So, in talking about it, let's say, somebody listening wants to now have this conversation. How can we potentially give people a few phrases or how to start the conversation? Because I think it can be uncomfortable for a lot of us, given that we didn't necessarily have those conversations or that sex ed when we were kids. Like, how can we help parents start to have these sort of modern day sex ed conversations with their kids?
If you're a parent that has never had any talk yet about sexuality, I do not recommend your first talk be about pornography. So even
Fair
though
enough.
you might be a parent now of a high schooler, it's not too late. But you did start late. I will call you out on that. And if you are a parent of a pre-K student, this is the time to start talking about sexuality topics. When you're telling them it's time to go change, start talking about body parts with anatomical parts, with the actual language, the actual terminology. Call it an actual penis. Don't call it a bird or your John or your little you, whatever nicknames we have. Call it a vulva. Call it breasts. We want to normalize that. And also call them private parts. Let them know what their boundaries are, and that if it's private, it needs to only be exposed or touched in a private place like a bedroom or a bathroom. So that's how you start having the conversation. So as you build on that body agency exercising, then you're also able to make more sense of what consent means, what healthy relationships mean, and what different bodies can look like. So when you have the porn conversations, you're building on that foundation and it's much easier. if you are not a parent of a pre-K student or a young child and you're starting in high school and you want to talk to them about porn, just first talk to them about anything else but porn that has to do with sexuality. Use a current event. Use something that's happening with a commercial, right? A celebrity and a picture they have posted or something that there's everyone's talking about, and just saying like, why do you think this celebrity is getting so much flack for what she's wearing, but we'll see a picture of this male celebrity pretty much wearing the same amount of clothing and not getting a lot of flack. And now you're having a gender dynamics conversation and talking about gender roles and misogyny and patriarchy. And then maybe you use another example later on where you say, I just listened to an episode with a sex educator who talks about porn in junior classes in high school. Do you think it's the right time for 17-year-olds to be talking about porn? And do you think school is the right place to do it? Get their opinion about the political aspect of what I do, and just get them like, oh yeah, my friends have been watching it since 7th grade, or it may be kind of weird, but yeah, I mean, I know classmates that are watching it. And in none of those examples are you asking your child, do you watch porn? What porn do you watch? When have you seen porn? No kid is going to answer that question and feel safe doing so. You're talking about it in a politicized way. You're talking about the external environment that surrounds them that is impacted by porn and sexuality. You're asking them about that Me Too story. You're asking them about a new legislation. What's your opinion on Florida now banning the word gay in classrooms? How do you think that would impact you in your school, live where you live? What is your opinion of the abortion ban that's happening in Texas? You're asking about their opinions on, sex politics. You're just getting them comfortable to talk about the field of sexuality, inserting your opinions as a conversation that you would have maybe already about climate change, and you just make it that normalized. So when you're talking about, whatever's happening with race or with global warming, you're also just talking about sexuality / you're having a sex talk. And it's not about them and what they did or when they did it or why they do it. What you're doing is setting up the, foundation for them to start feeling comfortable knowing, I've talked to my mom about these topics before. Now I'm experiencing something that is similar to that topic in my own personal life, with a crush I have, or with an identity I'm exploring, or with something that happened to my friend. Maybe now we just kind of pivot and we talk about it happening in a personal level and not in a political level, because that door has now been opened by virtue of you just talking and having them exercise those words coming out of their mouth. It's less scary.
I love this so much. And I'm like hanging on your every word. And I think another big piece similar to that is also a conversation around setting boundaries. And this is part of it. I know your whole social media account, one of your social media accounts, is all about setting boundaries. But how do we teach that and how do we practice that?
We practice that by exercising the platinum rule and throwing into the trash the golden rule. The golden rule is treat others the way that you want to be treated. This is trash because it assumes that everyone wants to be treated in the exact same way. And what's the problem with that? When you make that assumption that everyone wants to be treated like you want to be treated, it doesn't necessitate dialogue, negotiation, conversation, asking. So we're in this world that doesn't know how to practice consent and exercising boundaries because we make assumptions as to what their answer is based on what our answer would be. Or we just don't think that, their answer means anything because we think we're entitled to their body as opposed to really respecting their boundary. So we don't even bother considering how they might feel. So Milton Bennett came up with the platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. The reason that's a game changer is because the only way to know how someone else wants to be treated is by asking them, by communicating, by having actual dialogue. Hey, what would make you feel comfortable? Hey, would you want to do this instead? What would you want? What do you like? Right? That's consent practice. And it doesn't have to do with intercourse. It has to do with what movie you want to watch, what activity you want to do next, what food you want to order. This is how we can model it already with our own children, by modeling it at home and letting them know that they have a choice here and there's no threat or obligation. So that when they start to feel that and are well exercised in consent practice, they can feel when it's not present in their own relationships. Wait, something feels weird here. I wasn't even given a chance to say no, or that wasn't an option, or I feel forced to say yes right now. And they feel it in their bones that this is not a consensual thing and can assert themselves. And if they're the person that's asking, they're able to really assess what is a real yes and what kind
Mm.
of power do I have that makes them feel like they might have to say yes around me.
I want this to like sink in because I think we all have such a bias that we think what we think is right, and to recognize that what somebody else is looking for may not be what we're looking for in any given moment. And that could change at any given moment. So tell us also about your ghostwriting Instagram account for people who maybe need some support around this.
So I am a single Asian woman in New York City, and I've been in the dating app scene here for 10 years. And in those 10 years, I have rejected many men. And in doing so, I have not ghosted them when I've decided to end it after one date, 3 dates, 1 month, whatever it is, and actually tell them that I want to end it and why I want to end it. And I've been doing it in a compassionate yet assertive way. The majority of responses I'll get from men are positive. Wow, thank you so much for being so transparent and honest about it, when most people would really just ghost me out or deflect, the question for a second date. Or something along the lines like, that's a bummer, but I appreciate you telling me, and not just like, ghosting me. And I've had fragile, sensitive men who are insecure who have said things, that don't need to be said on air in response to me rejecting them. Nonetheless, I have accrued a long document of all of these rejection texts that I was encouraged by my best friend to keep because I write good ones. And I didn't think they were anything profound, but she had told me most people would just ghost them. But you actually take the time to write and say something that's kind yet honest and connective in already a world that's so divided. And you should keep this because someone's going to benefit from it one day. And I did. And when the pandemic hit, I was looking at different types of things I can do while being sheltered in place. And I looked at this long document and said, maybe Instagram is where this can live because other people can consume it and maybe use these templates for their own life. So it's expanded from dating situations to all sorts of categories in the work front, home life, partnerships, uh, social social distancing protocols with COVID, all sorts of different boundary settings where people can learn from the grid to get examples of a text message that they could send in a particular situation. Or they can DM me for a particular custom request, asking how do I break up with someone or set this boundary with this person without making them feel bad, or because I feel bad, I don't want to, so help me and encourage me with some words. And I know I always benefit from having an example, a template, a script. And so far, so do 11,000 other people.
Right. Awesome. Tell everybody the handle too.
@_good_buys_.
Awesome. So before we wrap this up with our rapid fire off topic questions, anything we missed or a final thought or something you want to make sure we say?
We missed a ton of things, but you can fill
I
in all
know.
those gaps with JustineFonte.com, which is my website.
Awesome. So rapid fire off topic questions. You ready?
Ready.
What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week?
Best thing I did for my health this week was order Filipino food from one of my favorite spots in Hell's Kitchen. That was yesterday. Naughtiest thing? I skipped my gym class because I needed to sleep in, and so I said, "All right, I'm going to get a penalty for this, but I need this sleep." So I skipped my gym class yesterday.
I think that's a great idea. All right. If you weren't a sex educator, what would you do?
I think I usually say I would be a chef, like because I do love just cooking a lot, but I don't know if I could deal with the amount of stress and time sensitivity around food being served to people that are complete strangers to me. But I think I would say chef because that would be cool.
What's your favorite book on any topic? Could be fiction, just not a book on your area of expertise.
Dear Girls by Ali Wong is, I think, right now my favorite book.
Awesome. If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
Male fragility.
Ooh, good one. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
Fluent in every language and dialect, so I can order food in every single language and dialect that matches the
Yes.
cuisine.
Amazing. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Male fragility.
I was going to guess, right? All right. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
Oof. I'm gonna say the frontier. I hope it is because I think when we're in a capitalist world, I can predict what the next frontier is gonna be, but it's not one that I want to subscribe to.
Get
So I
that.
think what I would say is the next frontier of wellness is body affirmation being a lot stronger than what it currently is, and not for profit based reasons, but genuinely to help people to love their body.
Amen. So, Justine, thank you again for being here. I know you gave your website and your handle, but tell everybody how to connect with you, where to find more, all the things.
My website is justinefonte.com. My two Instagram accounts are as follows. My personal is at I'm Justine AF, and my boundary setting account, where I am a ghostwriter for you, is at underscore good period buys underscore.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I just truly appreciate your time and everything you're doing in this world. We're grateful.
Thank you, Jen.
Sure. Do you have another minute to hang out for our nutrition nugget?
Yeah.
Awesome. So this week, we're talking about Catalina Crunch. So maybe you've seen it in your grocery store, maybe online because they have a subscription service. But Catalina Crunch is marketed to us as low carb, low sugar alternative cereal. They also have cookies and some snack mixes. And they call it a gluten-free, grain-free cereal that's keto and low-carb lifestyle friendly. I feel like I'm reading a commercial. Their marketing says, with filling plant protein, fiber, and micronutrients, you can enjoy real cereal and crunchy cookies minus the guilt, right? So, oh, wait, it goes on. Get ready to wave goodbye to boring, bland crackers and carton-like cereal substitutes, leaving a bad taste in your mouth. Pure pleasure plus plant-based protein. Put these cookies on nutritious pedestal. Oh my goodness. So my sister introduced me to these, to the cereal-ish versions. And I tasted a bunch of flavors at her house. Then when I saw them in my store in New York, I picked up a bag. I got the chocolate peanut butter flavor. So I'll finish that story in a second. But I think it's interesting for us to look at what they offer. So the founder was a fan of chocolate puffs as a kid. As a teen, he became diabetic and struggled to find a satisfying substitute, right, for his favorite breakfast. So he launched Catalina Crunch in 2017 in New York as a keto-approved plant-based option. So they boast as being non-GMO, right? We know genetically modified, no artificial ingredients, zero sugar, gluten and grain free, crunchy, right? Which, helps keep you satisfied for longer, feeling full, which crunchy can help with that, but it's really more fiber. And then it says macros on fleek. So Catalina Crunch is loaded with 11 grams of plant protein, 9 grams of fiber, 0 grams of sugar, and 5 grams of net carbs. So when we actually look at the ingredients, though, which we know we need to do, so the cereal ingredients, um, free from grains and gluten, which might make you wonder, what is it made of? So they make their cereals with a special Catalina flour. So this flour has pea protein, potato fiber, non GMO corn fiber, and chicory root fiber as the main ingredients. So the potato fiber, they say, is free of starches, and corn fiber can be a prebiotic fiber. Um, and it's not the same as the grain corn that we typically think of. Um, and then, there's also the cookies have slightly different nutritional information. So we always want to look at them, right? I think the cookies boast as having, 1 gram of sugar, 5 grams of net carbs. And, I think there's sort of pros and cons to these choices. So my pros and cons, I think the pros, they're offering us cereal, cookies, a snack mix, or a crunch mix, I think they call it. So we get some options. I think as far as, putting the word alternative in air quotes, I think alternative foods, they taste pretty good. Like some of the flavors are better than others. Um, I think they have 8 different cereal flavors, 4 different kinds of cookies. So um, I ended up eating the one that I bought was like a chocolate peanut butter mix. I ended up eating them separately. Like I didn't like the taste of them together. And I sort of felt like you have to think about chocolate for it to really taste like chocolate, or you have to think about peanut butter for it to really taste like peanut butter. But, you know, they're not bad, all things considered, especially for these alternative things. I think they do give you a relatively significant amount of protein, fiber, and quality fat compared to other options. Um, the cereal and the cookies are vegan. The cereal is completely gluten free. The crunch factor is definitely a pro because it does, when you're craving sort of like that crunchy thing, it hits the spot. On the cons side, they really do have small portion sizes. So one serving is a half a cup, which might be enough if you're using it sort of on top of some yogurt or on top of a smoothie bowl. But if you're looking for a cereal bowl, like that's not going to do it. And we know that when we double the portion to provide a filling amount of fiber or a filling amount of protein, you're actually then eating sort of disproportionate amounts of some of this fiber, and you could end up with some gastrointestinal discomfort, we should say. So make sure, we're slowly consuming extra amounts of fiber and, getting extra water too. And personally, I didn't love like the feeling in my mouth after eating it. I sort of felt like there was almost like this weird film, but it was very filling. So I definitely could not have eaten the whole bag in one sitting. So where does this leave us? I gave you my personal pros and cons. I think all in, like if you're looking for something to put on top of your yogurt or a smoothie bowl, or you want a little crunch, this can be a great option. But we still want to remember it is a processed food, right? I would put it in the category of a healthier versus a healthy option. And remember, just because it's touting all the fad diet friendly labels doesn't necessarily mean that we want to eat it at the expense of eating whole, real, actual food. But nevertheless, it can be an awesome way to sort of keep aligned with your goals and keep moving forward, while still having something that feels a little like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So there you have it, guys. My take on Catalina Crunch. So Justine, any questions on Catalina Crunch?
I'd be curious to try.
Yeah, I think I would go for the Cinnamon Toast Crunch version of the flavors. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Absolutely. So, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram at Jen Trepeck, JenNTrepeck. Our Facebook page, actually, all social media at Jen Trepeck. Consider this your personal invitation. Send me a message. Let me know your questions, your ideas, key takeaways. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me. Of course, if you're not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries to show your support for this podcast, this community, and most importantly, supports your health. This week, you're getting the recipe for apple pie energy bites and Justine's article for Parents Magazine. So remember, my friend, these are not taboo topics, but rather life-saving information. The health gap impacts the achievement gap. And while it is a systemic issue, the work each of us can do in our own community truly matters. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.